Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Perrisburg. In today's episode we are going to be building the City Pier. We have this strip of land over here which I talked about in an earlier episode as well, and I really wanted to make a City Pier out of it as I just thought it would look nice and I didn't want to completely remove this strip of land. This City Pier will be partly inspired by the Navy Pier in Chicago, which I find pretty interesting, the stories behind it as well, with of course the Ferris wheel at the end of the pier. So this place used to be the harbor of Perrisburg, but when the ships became bigger and bigger and the city became more popular for cargo transport and for living there, the government decided to move the harbor to another spot so they could expand, because there really wasn't any space to expand the harbor, which was definitely needed back in the times. So then they had this area kind of left over because it didn't get used anymore, and they decided to make the City Pier out of the old harbor. And that's why you'll later on see some big hulls placed and some other remains of the harbor. So now you see me placing a few quay walls around this bay with some pier decks next to it, because this bay is going to be a gigantic marina in the future. I planned on putting that in this episode as well, but it just became too much for one episode, so you'll see the marina build in the next episode, and today we are going to be focusing on the pier itself. So in the time lapse you saw me build a ferry pier with a massive parking, and I can imagine that this parking might be a bit too big for this area. Why this parking is so big is because this used to be a storage place for all the containers coming in the harbor. While it is a parking, it also gets used for other stuff, for example a market or some other event. Over here we are building a train station, and this train station used to be the connection between the harbor and the inner lands where stuff got produced. Somewhere in the future we'll probably build some big farm area. or the other way around. Nowadays it's used as a passenger station to transport people to the pier and of course to connect to the ferry that we've built. We'll also have a tram connection, so it's basically a lot of services coming together. While I was talking about the public transport in this area, we actually placed our Ferris wheel, which I renamed with Perry's wheel at the end of the episode. How funny. Yeah, so this is the most iconic thing about this city pier, and I don't know, it just looks cool from a distance. Luckily I didn't forget to put a fence around the parking, so I decided to build it right now, because I didn't want people falling off into the ocean. Wouldn't be good for the reputation of this pier, right? You can see that the fence has been built a lot later than the area where now the parking lot is, and that would be logical because when there were a lot of containers stored, there was no fence needed. I hope you enjoyed that cinematic. We are starting on a little place where trams can wait until they are being used again. I felt like that would be a very nice filler for this area. And of course, this used to be another small storage place for the containers, and specifically the more important containers that would be transported by train later that day. Nowadays it's just a little place for trams to wait, so you see every place in this pier has its own story. And of course we need a fence for that too, because we don't want people just walking in and repainting all the trams. Which will probably happen anyways, but you know, it's a sign you give. So we are placing a few warehouses over here. This used to be a place for people from the harbor to store their goods that were even more valuable or just didn't need to get wet. Nowadays they are used for certain kinds of events and some parts still as storage. And this bigger warehouse is nowadays used as a big event hall, and I think this used to be something like a shipyard or the office of the harbor, something like that. So over here we build a supermarket, and this supermarket got here after this harbor became a city pier, because there were a lot of tourists, and tourists need food, tourists need drinks, they need, you know, supplies to survive. Now we are just placing a few more warehouses on the waterfront that again used to be storage places for cargo. Over here we are placing a small restaurant for tourists to enjoy their lunch while they are on the pier. Although I have to say there's not a lot of entertainment, but I can imagine after a nice ferry tour you'd like something to drink and eat, or after an event of course. And then it's time for a little place with some market stands where, well, people can buy various stuff. I felt like that had to be on a touristic place like this, and this place can also be used for events when the markets are gone. And of course back in the days this used to be another storage place for cargo in the open air. We are now going to detail the existing areas with some trees and fences and other nice stuff. So I hope you enjoy the time lapse. For the last things of this episode, you see me making a tram line from the central station to the pier and renaming the Ferris wheel to Paris wheel. So that said, this is it for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe. It would really help me out. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers. So yeah, that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next one.